Hello everyone, welcome to today's session of MMPYQ of NEXT IAS. So continuing with our journey, we will be discussing one question of agriculture. Okay, so today's question is based on land reforms. If we see that what is our syllabus of agriculture, then we will see that land reforms in India. This is directly mentioned in our syllabus. Okay, if we see the question which have been asked in previous years, then in 2021 one question was based on land reforms, and again in 2023 we have a question on land reform. So the question which was asked in 2023 is, state the objectives and measures of land reforms in India. Okay, then it says, discuss how land selling policy on land holding can be considered as an effective reform under economic criteria. Okay, so it's a very straightforward question in the sense there is no issue in interpretation. Okay, we just, if you have enough content for it, then we will be writing a very good answer for this question. Okay, so we will directly jump into the introduction. So land reforms. Okay, what we can do in introduction is simply define the land reforms and state its importance. Okay, so we can say that land reform is a process to regulate the ownership structure of land, especially in rural areas. Okay, then we can extend this line to say that it is a potent tool of rapid socio-economic transformation. Okay, so this can be a very simple introduction yet very effective one. Okay, you can also link it with DPSP. In polity you must have studied that there are certain directive principles are there. So there is article 39 B and C, which says that state should protect the concentration of wealth. Okay, so we can mention this particular article in our introduction. Okay, you can also use these particular articles in your conclusion also. Okay, so going forward, that what should be the content of our body part. Okay, now before directly jumping into the objectives and measures which were taken for the land reforms, we have to tell or we need to have an understanding of that what were the prevalent issues especially related to land in the rural India. Okay, at the time of independence, as well as we also have to link what is the situation right now also. Okay, so if we see that there if in terms of issues, if we see, then there is a concentration of wealth is there. Okay, so here wealth means land. Okay, then exploitation is there. Okay, so if we see these two things, then at the time of independence, the revenue system which was adopted by the Britishers when they came to India, it favored the intermediaries or the zamindars. Okay, not the actual tillers or the farmers, which led to the concentration of wealth. Simultaneously, there was a lot of exploitation of farmers. Okay, or the tenants, you can say, sharecroppers. So these two things are there. Then if we see what are the other issues, so low productivity. fragmentation of land. Okay, one more point can be added here: poor state of land records. Okay, so we need to keep these points while writing the objectives of the land reform as well as the measures which were taken by the government at that time and as well as present time. Okay, so now we will look the exact points which we will be writing in the objective part. Okay, so we have been asked that what was the objectives of land reform at the time of independence as well at the present time also. Okay, our first part will be related to equitable distribution of land. Okay, so we have seen in the issues that because of the revenue system which was adopted by the Britishers, there was not a equitable distribution or a concentration of land in few hands was there at that time. Okay, so equitable distribution of land was there. Basically one of the primary objectives of the land reform is there. Okay, other thing is to stop the exploitation. Okay, okay, we already have seen that actual farmers or the tenants which were doing the cropping and farming on the lands, they were exploited a lot. Okay, so equitable distribution of land, that is the one of the primary objectives, to stop the exploitation of tenant farmers. Okay, so the revenue system which was adopted by the Britishers was in favor of basically the intermediaries or the zamindars. Okay, so at that time lot of exploitation of farmers which were actually doing the cropping was happening. Okay, so their rent was very high. Okay, they were evicted from their own lands. Okay, so these kind of exploitation was there. Okay, to stop the exploitation of tenant farmer, one of the primary objective. Enhancing the productivity. Okay, this was a major concern. Okay, so productivity of Indian agriculture was very low. Okay, especially at the time of independence. So maintaining and increasing the productivity of land, one of the objective was there for the land reforms. Okay, improving the land records. So basically improving the status of land record. Okay, some other objective which we can mention is related to social justice. Okay, so people, basically the groups which were from the backward section of the society in terms of caste, gender, so they had very less or almost no ownership of the land, and land is a very important economic resource, especially in rural India, because agriculture is the primary source of occupation. Okay, so land, without land you cannot do agriculture. So from the perspective of social justice, access to land is very important. Okay, and we need to mention this thing. Also you can write poverty removal point also here. Okay, because land is a very important economic resource. So these are the things which you can say ki, these are the major objective of land reforms adopted by the government at the time of independence, especially in the first 20 years after independence, as well as some land reform are still in the process. So that has also been adopted. These are the basically the major objective which is being adopted by the government. Now what were the actually the measures through which these objectives were to be achieved? Okay, so now we have to write the measures: removal or abolition of intermediaries. Okay, so we know that revenue system which was adopted by the Britishers were actually favored it was in favor of zamindars. Okay, so removal of these intermediaries was very important for land reforms. So it was actually one of the most successful steps of the land reforms adopted in post-independent India. Okay, then land ceiling. Okay, adoption of land ceiling. So what does actually land ceiling mean is that we will prescribe some certain amount of land. That is the basically maximum amount of land a person or a farming household can actually possess. Okay, so if you are possessing more than that, then that extra or surplus land will be taken by the government and redistributed it to those people who have no land or very less land. Okay, so land ceiling was there. Okay, second part is also on land ceiling, then we will actually discuss it in more detail. The next point which we have to discuss is tenancy reform. Okay, so now what do we mean by tenancy reform? Okay, so we have seen that a lot of exploitative practices were adopted by the British as well as the zamindars or the intermediaries. So like high rent was there, okay, eviction was there. So to stop all these practices, tenancy reforms were adopted. So here there was basically a security of tenure. Okay, so randomly no one can remove from your land. Okay, security of tenure means that. Then regulation of rent was there. So rate of basically rent was very high at the time of basically in the Britishers time. Okay, but these were basically so these rates were reduced and they were brought under the regulation of government. Okay, then conferment of ownership was also there. Okay, so ownership of land to the tenant can also be given under these laws. That we have discussed that the productivity part was very low. Okay, so for that a particular thing related to land consolidation was adopted. Okay, so in land consolidation we can say that a particular farmer has small parcels of land which are basically spread all over the village, a particular village. Okay, so under this land consolidation what will happen, that he will be given a particular large piece of land of, similar to the total area or total land which has been basically owned by him. Okay, so what will happen from here, economies of scale come. Okay, so basically productivity here will increase and the use of basically resources will be done in more efficient manner. Okay, so that is something land consolidation means. Then we have discussed there is a basically poor state of land record was there. Okay, so land record modernization program has been adopted. Okay, okay, so this was adopted in started in 2008. So digitization of land record has been done, revenue administration reform in revenue administration has been done. Okay, then some recent land reform activities we can also mention. Okay, so Forest Right Act has been adopted. So under this, tribal people who are living in forest in a traditional sense have been given or legal recognition to their traditional rights have been given under the Forest Right Act. Okay, model land leasing law has also been made by Niti Aayog. Okay, it came in 2016 to regulate the activity of leasing. Okay, so if leasing is made easy, then effective usage of land can be done. Otherwise owners have a fear that they will lose the land if they lease out it to the other farmers. Okay, so this particular land leasing law has been given by Niti Aayog. This model land leasing law has been given, okay, in 2016. So now going to our second part of the question. Question says that how land selling basically policy on land holding can be considered as an effective reform under the economic criteria. Okay, so we have to explain ki how land selling will be actually considered as an effective reform. Okay, so already I have told you that what do we mean by land selling. Okay, so basically this is basically the maximum amount of land a particular farmer or an individual is allowed to have possess. Okay, so more than this land you cannot have. Okay, so whatever, suppose a individual has more than that land. Okay, so surplus land will be taken by the government and given to landless people. Okay, so social justice point, which we actually discussed in the objectives of land reform, need to be discussed in more detailed manner here. Okay, now who are these landless people? Okay, so people, you can actually quote some data. Okay, so like women are there. Okay, so only 13%, around 13% of land holding are in the name of women. We can see how much of inequality in land ownership is there. Okay, so they can be given uh, people who belong to scheduled caste. Okay, so SECC data is there, which says that only 30% of basically scheduled caste rural household, they do not have any kind of land. Okay, so you can quote these kind of data to show that this land ceiling policy can be effective under the economic criteria. Okay, now suppose this if this particular policy is effectively implemented and the people who have less land or have no land, if they get the land, what can be the different kind of economic things, basically economic benefit can arise out of that. Okay, so land can be used for various purposes. Okay, so to grow the crops or also do the livestock farming. Okay, that will lead to actually poverty alleviation, inclusive growth. Okay, these point of basically these kind of points can be mentioned in our answer. Similar kind of things have been done in few states. So under like Kudamshiri is there. So under this program, government has given this kind of surplus lands to self-help groups. Okay, especially self-help groups in which women are there. Okay, so which has actually led to the inclusive growth, poverty alleviation. Okay, social justice, all kind of point can be mentioned here. Now, after explaining that how can be a land ceiling policy can be a effective basically land reform, we also need to mention its shortcomings. Okay, so shortcoming is basically in the form of implementation is there. So these actually have been adopted. Okay, and successfully they have been done in certain states. Okay, so like in Jammu Kashmir also. Okay, West Bengal, in Kerala. Okay, but in other state land ceiling policies have not been implemented effectively. Okay, so there were basically some loopholes were there. So like Benami transfer. Okay, you can mention certain loopholes due to which implementation of land ceiling policy was not done in an effective manner. Okay, so Benami transfer is there. Okay, different kind of loopholes were there. So Benami transfer was one of the thing. Okay, so due to which the land reforms were not very successful, especially related to land ceiling. Okay, so coming to our conclusion. Okay, what can be our conclusion in land reforms? So one conclusion I have already told you that if you have not mentioned the directive principle thing, okay, article 39B and C, if you have not used it in your introduction, then you can use this thing in your answer and say that land reform can actually help government as well as state, okay, basically to remove the concentration of wealth. Okay, we can also link it with our inclusive growth, that land reforms can be a driver of inclusive growth. Okay, especially in the context of increasing income inequality. So that can be your conclusion. Okay, so that will be all for today's session. Thank you.